cat people. You know how we all want our cats to be, like, living their best lives, like peak happiness.
Of course. Who doesn't want a happy cat?
Right. So today, we are diving deep into all the ways to make that happen, especially for our indoor cats. And it's more than just, the occasional catnip party.
Definitely more to it than that.
Okay, so to really get into it, we're looking at a few different things today. We've got some quick tips from a video by animalia.pk.
I've seen those. They're good.
Yeah, super practical, good place to start. And then we're going to hear from, the cat whisperer himself, Jackson Galaxy.
Oh, he's great. Love his whole philosophy on making your home cat-friendly.
Exactly, that whole catification thing. We're going to unpack all of that. Oh, and get this, we've also got a TED Talk about play. Yeah, by Nikki Trevorrow, and she talks about how important it is, even fish get in on the action.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Fish playing. I gotta hear this.
I know, right? It's wild. We'll get to that. But first, let's tackle these animalia.pk tips. They cover a ton, from giving your cat attention to the importance of, believe it or not, grooming.
Grooming, huh?
Yeah.
People don't always realize how important that is.
Seriously, it's like a mini spa day for them, right? Keeps their fur in check, which, let's be real, is a win for us too. Less fur everywhere.
Absolutely. And a well-groomed cat is a happy cat. It can even prevent some health problems down the line, like hairballs.
Exactly. And it's not just about, getting rid of shedding. It can actually help you spot any skin issues they might have early on, which is really important.
It's true. And while we're talking about that close connection, I noticed they also mentioned talking to your cat. Now, I know that might sound a little strange to some people.
No, I talk to my cat all the time. I mean, I don't know if he understands me, but...
Well, think about it this way. Cats are really good at reading body language. They might not get the words, but they definitely pick up on our tone and how we're acting.
So it's more about, the vibe we're giving off.
Exactly. Speaking to them in a calming, reassuring voice can really strengthen your bond and make them feel more secure.
So basically, keep those good vibes flowing. And speaking of good vibes and feeling secure, let's talk about Jackson Galaxy and his whole catification thing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. He's all about designing our homes in a way that makes our cats feel, well, at home.
Okay, so for those who are new to this whole idea, what are some of the core principles behind catification?
Well, one of the big ones is vertical space. You know how cats love to be up high?
Oh yeah, my cat turns into Spider-Man if I leave anything on a shelf.
Exactly. That's because in the wild, being up high gives them a sense of security and a better view of their surroundings. So incorporating cat trees, shelves, even just rearranging furniture to give them some high vantage points can make a huge difference.
It's like bringing the outdoors in, but in a way that works for both of us.
Exactly. And speaking of the outdoors, another thing Galaxy talks about is the importance of sunlight.
Oh yeah, my cat will literally bake himself in any sliver of sun he can find.
Of course. Cats are naturally drawn to warmth and light, so making sure they have access to sunny spots is super important for their mood and well-being.
It's like giving them their own little slice of feline heaven right in your living room.
Precisely. And speaking of feline heaven, Galaxy also talks about the ultimate catification solution, the catio.
Catio. Now that sounds intriguing. What exactly is that?
Imagine this, a screened-in porch or patio, but specifically designed for your cat.
Wait, so like a cat tree but supersized and they can actually go outside?
Basically, it's a way for them to experience the sights, sounds, and even smells of the outdoors, but in a safe and controlled environment. You can get super creative with it too, adding climbing structures, hiding spots, maybe even some cat-friendly plants.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Sign me up. But even with the coolest catio in the world, we still need to engage our cats' minds and bodies, right? And this is where I think Jackson Galaxy's emphasis on play really resonated with me.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, waving a feather toy around for a few minutes. Galaxy really stresses the importance of tapping into their natural hunting instincts.
Okay, so we need to up our play game. What does that look like in practice?
It's about making things unpredictable. Instead of just dragging a toy across the floor, try hiding it under a blanket and then letting it peek out.
Oh, I see. So they actually have to, stalk it a bit?
Exactly. Or you can vary the speed of the toy, let them catch it sometimes, even try different types of toys, some that resemble rabbits, others that look like mice or birds.
So it's all about keeping things interesting. Now, this actually reminds me of something Nikki Trevorrow talked about in her TED Talk. She mentioned that cats have different play styles. She called them, the rabbit, the mouse, and the moth. Have you heard of this?
Well, yeah, it's fascinating. It explains why some cats go crazy for certain toys, but completely ignore others.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are these different play styles all about?
It all comes down to how they engage with the prey. So your classic rabbit cat loves to grab and kick with their back legs, kind of like a rabbit trying to flee. Then you've got your mouse cats who are all about chasing and pouncing on things that dart and skitter across the floor.
And the moth cats, I'm guessing they're all about those feathery flyaway toys?
Yada, anything that flutters and swoops through the air is going to drive a moth cat wild.
This is so cool. So how do we figure out our cat's preferred style? Is it just trial and error?
A lot of it is observation. Watch how they play, what really gets them excited, what they tend to ignore. Once you start understanding their style, you can tailor your playtime to their specific preferences.
That makes so much sense. It's like learning their love language, but through play.
Exactly. Now, before we move on, I have to ask about laser pointers. I know a lot of cats go crazy for them, but I've heard they can actually be frustrating if not used correctly.
Right, because they can never actually, catch the light.
Precisely. While cats love the thrill of chasing the laser pointer, never being able to actually catch it can lead to frustration and even obsessive behaviors.
So how can we make sure we're using laser pointers in a way that's fun and engaging, but not like messing with their little cat brains?
Always, always, always in the play session by transitioning to a physical toy that they can actually catch and kill. This gives them a sense of accomplishment and prevents them from feeling like they've been chasing a phantom.
Such a good tip. I'm definitely going to start doing that. Speaking of engaging your cat's hunting instincts, let's talk about feeding enrichment. I feel like this is something that's been getting a lot of attention lately.
And for good reason. Turning mealtime into a game is one of the best things you can do for your indoor cat, both mentally and physically.
I'm all for making things more fun, especially when it comes to food. So, what's the thinking behind feeding enrichment? Why is it so beneficial?
Well, it all comes down to mimicking their natural foraging behavior. In the wild, cats spend a good chunk of their day hunting for food, which stimulates their minds and keeps them active. Feeding enrichment brings that element of challenge and reward into their indoor lives.
So instead of just, sarfing down kibble from a bowl, they actually have to work for it a little bit.
Exactly. This not only keeps them entertained, but also helps prevent boredom, which can lead to all sorts of behavioral problems. Plus, it can even slow down their eating, which is great for cats who tend to overeat.
And I love that it taps into their natural instincts, like you said. So where do we even begin with feeding enrichment? What are some good starting points?
Nikki Trevorrow showed some really cool ideas in her TED Talk. She started with something surprisingly simple, an empty egg carton.
An egg carton, seriously.
I know, right?
Mhm.
But it's a great way to introduce the concept. You just pop a few treats or some kibble into the sections, and your cat has to figure out how to fish them out.
Okay, I can see how that would be entertaining for them. It's like a puzzle and a snack all in one.
Exactly. It's a great starting point.
Mm.
Once they've mastered that, you can level up to something like a toilet roll pyramid.
A toilet roll pyramid. Okay, I'm intrigued. How do you even make one of those?
It's super easy. You just take a few empty toilet paper rolls, secure them together in a pyramid shape, and then you hide treats inside the tubes. Your cat will have a blast batting them around and trying to figure out how to make those treats fall out.
I can already see my cat going crazy for that. But what about cats who need a bit more of a challenge?
That's where puzzle feeders come in. You can find some incredibly intricate ones these days with different compartments, drawers, sliders, all sorts of things your cat has to manipulate to get to the food.
Talk about a mental workout. But with all these options, it's important to remember that every cat is different. What works for one cat might not work for another, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nikki Trevorrow made a great point about starting slow, paying attention to what your cat enjoys, and finding what works best for them.
It's all about making it a fun and rewarding experience for both of you.
Exactly. It shouldn't feel like a chore or a source of frustration. The beauty of feeding enrichment is that it can be as simple or as elaborate as you want it to be.
So whether it's an empty egg carton or a multi-level puzzle, the goal is the same: to keep them engaged, satisfied, and entertained.
And let's be honest, who doesn't love watching their cat having fun and using their brain power? It's incredibly rewarding for us cat parents, too.
Speaking of rewarding, this deep dive has already been so insightful. We've learned so much about how to enrich our cats' lives, from creating stimulating environments to understanding their play styles and even turning mealtime into an adventure. It's amazing how much there is to discover about our feline companions.
And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's always something new to learn and explore when it comes to making our cats happy.
Absolutely. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's wrap up this first part of our deep dive with a thought that really resonated with me from Nikki Trevorrow's TED Talk. She said that sometimes our cats are trying to teach us how they like to play.
Isn't that the truth? We often approach playtime with our own ideas of what's fun, but our cats have their own unique preferences and ways of communicating those preferences.
So how can we become better students of our cats and really allow them to guide the play experience?
It all starts with observation, paying close attention to their body language, their vocalizations, their overall engagement during play. What gets them excited? Do they prefer fast, erratic movements or slower stalking movements? Do they get frustrated if they can't catch the prey?
It's like learning their individual play language.
Exactly. And once you start paying attention, you might be surprised by what you discover.
That is such a good point. I feel like we often get so caught up in our own ideas of what our cats should enjoy that we forget to actually observe and listen to what they're trying to tell us.
It's true. But the good news is, it's never too late to start paying attention and deepening that bond with your feline friend.
Absolutely. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener, and I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of my cat and how to make his indoor life more enriching and fulfilling.
It's all about tapping into their natural instincts, providing opportunities for mental and physical stimulation, and most importantly, making it fun for both of you.
So, as we wrap up this first part of our feline-focused deep dive, I have a little challenge for all of you listening. Take some time this week to really observe your cat during playtime. Pay attention to those subtle cues, those little hints they're giving you about what they enjoy. You might be surprised at what you discover. It really is remarkable how much our cats can teach us if we just, pay attention.
Absolutely. They're constantly communicating with us. It's just a matter of learning to interpret their language.
Which I guess is like a big part of what we're doing here today. So to kind of recap, we've talked about those quick tips from animalia.pgk, things like grooming and talking to your cat.
And the importance of understanding their natural instincts.
Right, which is where Jackson Galaxy comes in with that whole catification philosophy.
Which, by the way, I think is something every cat owner should look into.
Totally. It's not just about like making your home look like a cat jungle. It's about really meeting your cat's needs on a deeper level.
Exactly. And it can be as simple or as elaborate as you want it to be.
Exactly. You don't need a huge house to give your cat a great life.
No, not at all. It's more about being mindful of their needs and creating an environment where they can thrive.
It's so true. So to circle back, we were talking about the concept of catios before the break.
Ah, yes. Catios, the ultimate catification dream.
For those who maybe missed it, can you just give us a quick rundown of what a catio is?
Sure. Basically, a catio is like a patio or porch that's been enclosed and outfitted specifically for your cat.
So they get to experience the outdoors, but safely.
Exactly. It's a great way to give them some fresh air, sunshine, and mental stimulation without the risks of, cars or other animals.
That makes so much sense. I mean, I know my cat would go bonkers if he could explore outside, but I'd be way too nervous to ever let him out unsupervised.
I totally get it. A catio is a perfect compromise. Plus, you can get really creative with them.
Oh, yeah. Like what kind of creative?
Well, you could add climbing structures, shelves, scratching posts, even little catwalks or bridges.
Okay, now that sounds amazing, like a little cat playground.
Exactly. And you can even add some cat-friendly plants to give them some sensory stimulation.
Oh, that's such a good idea. So it's like bringing the outdoors in, but in a way that's safe and stimulating for your cat.
You got it. Catios really are a win-win.
I'm sold. I need to build one of these for my little guy.
You totally should. It's a game changer.
All right, so we've talked about catification, but we also need to make sure we're engaging our cats' minds and bodies, right?
Absolutely. And that's where playtime comes in.
Which is something, I'll be honest, I don't always make enough time for.
Oh, I totally get it. Life gets busy, but even a few minutes of dedicated playtime can make a world of difference for your cat.
So how can we make sure we're, maximizing those playtime sessions?
Well, we touched on this a bit earlier, but it's all about tapping into those natural hunting instincts.
Right, like pretending the toy is a mouse or a bird.
Exactly. And the key is to make the play unpredictable.
Unpredictable? How so?
Well, instead of just moving the toy in a straight line, try hiding it behind your back or under a blanket and then letting it peek out.
Oh, so they have to, like, hunt for it a little bit.
Exactly. You want to keep them guessing.
That's so smart. I'm realizing now that my playtime sessions are probably pretty boring for my cat.
Well, it's never too late to switch things up. You can also try varying the speed of the play.
So sometimes fast, sometimes slow.
Exactly. And don't forget to let them catch the toy sometimes.
Oh, right, because otherwise it's just endless frustration.
Precisely. You want to give them a sense of accomplishment?
This is great advice. I feel like I'm learning so much about how to be a better cat parent.
Well, that's what we're here for.
And speaking of learning, we were talking about those different cat play styles earlier. The rabbit, the mouse, and the moth.
Oh, yes. Those are so fascinating.
Can you just remind us again what those different styles look like?
Sure. So a rabbit cat is all about those big, powerful kicks with their back legs.
Like they're trying to escape.
Exactly. They love to grab and kick, grab and kick.
Okay, what about the mouse cats?
Mouse cats are your classic stalkers and pouncers. They love anything that darts and dashes across the floor.
It's like those little crinkle balls that skitter around.
Exactly. Those are perfect for mouse cats.
And then the moth cats, they're the ones who love the feathery toys,
Yeah.
right?
You got it. Anything that flutters and swoops through the air is going to drive a moth cat wild.
This is so cool. So how do we know which style our cat prefers?
It really comes down to observation.
Yeah.
Pay attention to how your cat interacts with different toys. What gets them the most excited? What do they seem to ignore?
So it's all about paying attention to their cues and figuring out what makes them tick.
Exactly. It's like learning their love language, but through play.
I love that analogy. All right, so we've talked about catification, play styles, and the importance of engaging our cat's natural instincts. Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked but equally important, feeding enrichment.
Yes, feeding enrichment. It's such a simple yet effective way to enrich our cats' lives.
I'm all ears. Tell me everything.
Okay, so the basic idea behind feeding enrichment is to make mealtime more engaging and stimulating for our cats.
So instead of just putting down a bowl of food and letting them at it.
Exactly. In the wild, cats spend a significant portion of their day hunting for food.
It's true. They're not just lounging around all day.
Right, and that hunting process is mentally and physically stimulating for them.
So feeding enrichment is about bringing that element of challenge and reward into their indoor lives.
You got it. It's about making them work for their food a little bit, just like they would in the wild.
That makes so much sense. So how do we actually do that? What are some examples of feeding enrichment?
So many good ideas. I'm inspired. But before we totally geek out over all the fun ways we can challenge our cats with their food, I do want to circle back to something we were talking about earlier, something that I think ties into this whole concept of feeding enrichment really well. Oh, you mean the idea that cats naturally spend a lot of their time hunting for food?
Exactly. And how feeding enrichment helps bring that element of hunting into their indoor lives.
It's so important. It's not just about keeping them entertained. It's about stimulating their minds and satisfying their natural instincts.
Right. And when we think about it that way, it makes those simple DIY feeding enrichment ideas even more appealing, don't you think?
Absolutely. Like, remember that egg carton idea Nikki Trevorrow mentioned? Something as basic as that can actually be really enriching for your cat.
Right. Because they have to, like, paw at it and figure out how to get the treats out.
Exactly. It's like a little puzzle for them. And you can do the same thing with, like, muffin tins, or even just scattering a few kibble pieces on the floor.
Oh, I've totally done that with my cat. He loves it when I make him hunt for his food.
See? It's those little things that can make a big difference.
Totally. And the best part is, it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive.
Exactly. Feeding enrichment is all about using what you have on hand and getting creative.
Love it. All right, so to kind of wrap things up, we've talked about catification, play styles, feeding enrichment, all these amazing ways to make our indoor cats' lives more enriching and fulfilling.
It's been such a great conversation.
I know, I feel like I've learned so much. But before we say goodbye, I do want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
What's that?
Well, I think this whole deep dive has really highlighted how important it is to pay attention to our cats, to really observe their behavior and try to see the world from their perspective.
So true. They're always trying to tell us something. We just have to learn to listen.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage all of you listening to go home and really observe your cats. Watch how they interact with their environment, how they play, how they eat. You might be surprised by what you learn.
And don't be afraid to try new things. Every cat is unique, so what works for one cat might not work for another.
Such good advice. All right, cat lovers, that's it for today's deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration into the world of feline happiness. Until next time, keep those tails twitching.